You're listening to PatchBay on TYM KRS.
Welcome to PatchBay, show about audio, techniques, music, making music, all sorts of things. I mean, it's kind of conversational, I guess. I'm Whisker. I produce a whole bunch of shows, and my co-host here is Shane. He's more of a professional. He makes actual records and stuff.
Actual records, and on occasion cassettes.
Yeah, well.
Although it's been a while.
So, this past week, I guess, 2 weeks, whatever, I've had a little bit of extra time. These are recorded a little bit in advance, but we're just getting back from the holiday break and getting back to recording here. And what I did with my sort of time off was to get Reaper set up.
Oh, cool.
Now, you mentioned this, I don't know how many episodes ago, but you were talking a little bit about it when we were talking about various DAWs and inexpensive ones, free ones, whatever. And Reaper is obviously high on everybody's list because you can get it for free, you can use it for free. Technically, if you keep using it, you're supposed to pay for it, but I don't know if I'm going to keep using it yet. So I've got it installed on its trial version, and I got my favorite plug-in system working with it, Guitar Rig, and I got my favorite synthesizer set up on there, Crystal Soft Synth.
Cool. And how are you finding it so far?
I get it. It seems to be doing its job well enough. One thing that I find that's a little bit lacking that I'm used to having is a very large collection of samples.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's the one thing I found too. There's not a ton of that. There's a few little bones of contention for me. I think if I was just starting on it and sort of grew into it a little bit more rather than having experience with other programs, I'd probably be a little cooler with it. As far as free software is concerned, it's pretty powerful. I mean, you can use it with quite a lot of different interfaces and things like that. But I just find that the menu system for me, if you sort of right click on the input, you got like 6 different input. You can listen to a pre-post tape, and there's just a whole bunch of there's tons of options, which can be a good thing, but you can get bogged down. That's my only sort of issue with it. Nice that it's all VSTs though.
Yeah.
Which Guitar Rig is VST, yeah?
Yeah, they've got a few different, it can be standalone and all sorts of different things. But yeah, the VST plugin stuff is how I typically use it.
Yeah, and I mean, and there's gazillions of free VSTs out there, some of which are, free isn't always good, but there are some good ones out there. It's just a matter of mining the good ones versus the not so good ones.
Yeah, that's why I like to mention Guitar Rig and Crystal Soft Synth, because I've spent time digging around and using a lot of different stuff over the years, and those two are very, very much my favorites. I really like them. They both have kind of a steep learning curve to do really advanced things with them, but once you get good with them, it's very, very easy to not need anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, once if you have software, like you say, if you have software that you know how to use, you can take it to the not even the limits of the possibilities, but it's nice when you know something that well. It doesn't become it's not bogging you down,
Yeah. And I'm to the point where with those two that I can essentially use them kind of more like you would use a modular synthesizer or something like that, because I'm not using it in the way that they necessarily intended it to be used. I'm using it to do all sorts of fun low-level trickery.
Exactly. Well, there you go. So are you keeping Reaper, or are you deleting it?
Well, I think I'm going to keep it on the Windows box in there. We've mentioned before, I've got 2 studios. I've got the one that I use for all of the podcast recording and all that, and that's Mac-based. Because, that's kind of how we roll. But for working
Yeah.
on this game soundtrack project that I've got going on, I really kind of want to be able to just sit in my office in front of my KRKs and work on it just in a more comfortable way than I can do here in the studio. In here it's set up more for multi-track remote call-ins and stuff like that. It's not so easy to just get into that zone and write music.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't, to tell you, I haven't done a lot of writing with Reaper, but some of it that I did, I got frustrated with I was getting bogged down with latency and stuff. But as far as mixing, I mixed one whole record with it, did a bunch of editing on it, and it worked quite well. Once I got about 2 songs in, I really had the flow. I think that's really the trick. Is if you force yourself to learn any program, if you force yourself to, do 2 or 3 songs or something, by the time you get to the third one, you kind of got a feel for, the way the system works. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the thing that's going to make it a lot more useful for me is just to go through my my samples that I use often and sort of export them in a nice clean format and then bring them over there and put them on that system so I've got access to them again.
I was gonna say, speaking of which, I've been saying that I was gonna take my sample library and, like, not so much put it in keys or BPMs or whatever, but, like, at least put it in sound effects, and then, these are drum loops, these are bass lines, this kind of thing. But it remains, like, still a mess to this day. Like, it's not just a bunch of files in one folder, but it's bad. And I always say I'm going to do it, but I never do. I just know where to find stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the longer you use a system, the more ridiculous it kind of gets. You're the only one who could ever use it.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, which is good. It's part of the master of the plan, right? But yeah, I mean, it would. I always keep saying, I'm like, if I just put this stuff in it would make it so much easier. Because then, if I was writing something, I'm looking for a bass line, I'm gonna click on the bass thing, and there we go. Like, but I just can't. I can't for the life of me sit down and actually organize. I'll organize other stuff, but I don't know. It's just one of those things that just doesn't ever get organized. Anyway, I had a funny recording session a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah?
Which I tweeted a picture of, but we'll get to that afterwards. So this band is quite heavy, and some members are from Winnipeg, some members are from Vancouver. And cool thing about the session was the guy sent me not the SoundCloud link, the Dropbox link on the Friday before the session, and so downloaded everything. And the guy is, I believe he uses Logic at home, but he had everything saved for me as WAV files, and everything was labeled, and the folders were labeled with the BPM, so it was like stupid easy to set everything up. And basically, once I downloaded everything, and just threw it into templates and Pro Tools that had headphone mixes pre-set up, and they walked in on Monday afternoon, we're good to go. Like, which that's just the genius of the internet nowadays, anyway.
That workflow has changed a lot in the last couple decades. Yeah.
And then the great thing too is when I was finished, I just export the tracks that we did record. I burned them a DVD to take home, and then I dumped the rest on Dropbox, just so he had here's your backup, of everything in case you want to grab it wherever, kind of thing. And I mean, the guy could probably be mixing it on his iPhone if he really wanted to. But the session went well. It was 3 tunes, nothing completely out of the ordinary. We did some guitars and vocals, and rhythm guitars, lead guitars, and vocals was basically what the gist of it was. There was like canned drums, but we're going to be redoing drums later. It sounds like we'll probably be doing a whole. This is the second record that I'm working on with these guys. But so the guitar, I was going to say the guitar was super straightforward. It was a pod, or it was a Yamaha guitar, and like with those screaming demon humbuckers in it. I think they're DiMarzio. And this guy just loves his Zoom pedal, which thankfully had a speaker emulator in it. So that's well, we did everything just straight like that. So it's straightforward plug and play. But anyway, on to the last bit was during the recording of the vocals. The guy who was singing, I guess we were all sort of chit-chatting in the studio, and I always have the talkback mic off when people were recording. But as the day was going on, we're doing vocal take, vocal take, vocal take, just of the same song over and over and over again. So he just like decided to drop his drawers while recording, singing his vocal take, and the one guy in the band managed to take a picture of it and post it on Facebook, and that's their like Facebook profile page.
Oh gosh.
Guy. Yeah, and the guy blurred out, the front, but I just don't understand why I always inspire male nudity.
Now, the real question is, did it help his performance?
I think it did, actually. Half of a bottle of vodka also helped as well.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Which may have been the reasoning for the inspiration, the nudity. But yeah, no, I actually thought by the end of it, he was actually singing. This is like basically the last take, and it may have been the nudity. It may have just been the fact that it was the last take, but he was quite a bit more comfortable. And the thing was, because we were all sort of chit chatting, wasn't listening as well as I could have been. So we sat back and listened to it afterwards. Yeah, everything sounded good. So it turned out well considering. But yeah, I don't know why this happens to me.
Yeah, well, if somebody's comfortable enough to get naked, then they're probably comfortable in the recording environment and able to get a nice, comfortable take, which I guess is good. Although I'm not sure it was necessary for you to email the photo over to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry about emailing it. I had tweeted it and I wasn't sure if you noticed it, so I had to do both.
Now I got to block you in 2 places.
Nah, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's one of those things because it's like it's not proof until everybody sees it. It could just be a mysterious studio story. Oh yeah, there was a guy naked in my studio one time. No, this actually happened.
Yeah.
It'll probably be the friggin' album cover. Anyway, these guys are really good. Their last record they had mixed at the Warehouse in Vancouver, which Brian Adams owns, and it was mixed by one of the guys that mixed Nickelback's first couple of records. Not their sold out, but their first record actually. So I don't know. Have you ever listened to any of their stuff before they hit?
No, I've pretty much avoided them, to be completely honest.
That's fair. Yeah, there's a quantitative difference between the two.
Yeah, I'm not so into the assembly line approach that they've got going on there.
Well, now they finally figured it out. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Anyway, but for a rock band, the polish and there's polish and there's rawness to it, but the mix it's very much like a Chris Lord-Alge kind of mix, So, do you know anything about him?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, if you look through anybody's CD collection, chances are there'll probably be 3 or 4 albums that he mixed. He's kind of the guy to a degree. He did Green Day Dookie, actually quite a lot of Green Day albums he's done, but tons of albums. But he's got a very specific kind of mixing style, and a lot of it has to do with compressors and 1176s, really. But he's one of those producers or those mixers that is just a mixer, and he's sought after for his sound kind of thing.
Yeah, it seems like he's the kind of guy that would get an interview in Tape Op.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, he's got no offense to him, but because he's got that sound, it's almost like the whole Nickelback cookie cutter kind of thing. Like, it's not that every one of his records sounds the same, but they do have there's a feel to them. But I mean, guy, I don't want to knock him. He's out there doing it, so it's all good, right? But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, when you're in that sort of position where these more assembly line operations are seeking you out because they know you can do the job well. It's not necessarily your fault.
No, no, exactly. And I mean, yeah, if somebody's going to pay you to keep doing the same record over and over again, if they're paying you well, I mean, yeah, I guess you can do it for a certain amount of time. I mean, people get paid more money for, doing the same thing, like hockey players, football players. So I guess, yeah, whatever works, right?
Yeah. So is there a lot of sort of cross-pollination between the Winnipeg music scene and the Vancouver music scene then?
Uh, yeah, I think to a degree. There's a cross pollination really across the West. And when I say West, I'm saying basically Winnipeg West. From there, there's pockets of a rock and roll scene in every major city in Canada. The thing is, um, the music scene in Canada, it like in the States, you don't have to drive super far to make it to another big town to play. But in Canada, like from here, from Winnipeg going west, the next big place you can play is 6 hours or 5 hours away. The next big place to play going east is about 8. Uh, so you got so much further distances to go to play these sort of main kind of towns, right?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot going on in the middle of the
No,
country there.
no. So yeah, it's like, Winnipeg, 5 hours away is Regina. Then after that, you're hitting Calgary and Edmonton, which is like 8 hours from there. So it's not like you can go down south and go 3 states down and then turn around, go over one state and come 3 states back up and hit 10, 12 major cities or decent sized cities. It's not the same idea. So because of that, I think the music industry, um, like rock bands, sort of, they sort of share a little bit. Like, for Winnipeg bands coming to Vancouver, they'll hang out with and sort of become friends with a Vancouver band. So when the Winnipeg band comes out there, they'll play a show with these guys, and vice versa, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really cool how that happens.
Yeah, it's good community. So yeah, I guess that's really sort of the scene per se. Um, part of the reason why I was working with this band was like three fifths of the band is from Winnipeg, and so it just happened by happenstance that they'd walked into the studio, and so the other two guys live out in Vancouver. So it's just, yeah, I guess whenever they're together. But these guys write and record. They demo all their stuff from home. They all have little recording systems at home, all different kinds of recording systems. But one guy kind of comes up with the stuff, and he sends the file to the next guy. He throws down the heavy guitars, and then they send it to the lyricist, and the guy just lets it loll around his head till he comes up with parts. And so it's really, they're writing songs not in the same room together, which is really kind of neat, actually.
Yeah, living in the future.
Basically, yeah. I think it's a really good, and what really kills me is that they've got up and played songs that they've never played together, and they went and played a show, and you know there's a new song on the set list that they've worked out and actually played together. You know what I mean?
That's pretty cool. You get to see them perform it live for the first time that they've
First
ever
time.
performed it together.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of odd, but yeah. I mean, whatever works. If you're good musicians, you can pull it off. It's just a matter of running it down at home or whatever with the demo, or getting it in your brain, right?
Yeah, for sure. So Winnipeg is actually the closest major Canadian city to where we're at here in Rochester, Minnesota, and yeah, it's still like 700 miles away.
And what's funny is I get Rochester Fox HD on my Shaw, on my cable.
Wow.
Not funny, but that's where my Fox feed comes, is from Rochester, actually. Because I'll get your guys' weather reports and your traffic reports and shit like that on the news in the morning.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I always find that kind of goofy. Yeah, no, that would be Yeah, I guess Winnipeg is probably the closest. I was thinking because Eastern Canada really there's no real big cities till you hit Toronto. Like
Yeah, and that's
there's
over on the
some
other side of the lakes from here. So,
that's the ways I drove around those lakes. They're not fun.
uh,
Well, at least on the Canadian side, anyway.
I was looking at the map a while back just to see how far out Winnipeg was from here, and it's the basically the exact same distance between here and Winnipeg as between here and the first town when you cross over between South Dakota and Wyoming, which is a favorite stop of ours when we're out traveling the country.
Oh,
Because the Ricochet Cafe is there and they have the best hamburgers in the known universe.
nice. This reminds me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy
So
restaurant.
if you draw out the triangle, you're technically closer to there than I am. So if you need directions, I got you hooked up.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Send me the link. If I ever go down south, we'll hit.
I don't think they have links to restaurants in that part of Wyoming.
No?
I
Oh,
think they have you go past the cow prairie
yeah, yeah.
there, and then there's a
That's the guy
tractor
with
and
the at the gas station, where to go find the good burger kind of thing.
yeah, totally.
That's like the province west of the Saskatchewan.
Let's put it
uh,
this way: there's
uh,
like 15 mentions of the place on the internet, and 10 of them are us talking about
really
it. Yeah,
nice.
super secret. Now
Yeah.
the music scene from the west side out up there, um, I don't know if most of the stuff that I've heard is from that side of things or if it's from the eastern side of things. Almost every single piece of more recent Canadian stuff that I come across is like more folk, bluegrass, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Was a lot of country music, bluegrass, that kind of stuff. That will happen on the prairies. There's a lot more of that kind of stuff happening out, in Winnipeg and Regina and well, Calgary. And Calgary is like where the Calgary Stampede is every year, so that's
Hmm.
like Countryville. As far as people coming out of Canada that get a name, it tends to be that our city that really manufactures super popular people would be Toronto. It's kind of like Nashville, sort of, to a degree, just because it's bigger population base, blah blah blah. Um, but I mean, as far as music scenes go, I think Winnipeg's probably got the most stable music scene in Canada, other than Vancouver. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that sort of down home kind of music is made across across the farm and prairies. Really, that's
Okay,
where a lot of
that
stuff
makes
comes.
sense because usually where I'll hear it first will be on shows like A Prairie Home Companion, which is recorded out of Minneapolis here in
Hmm.
Minnesota. And they seem to have a really good record of finding bands coming out of the Great White North there.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that's happening, even in like this is a little bit not so much a smaller scale, but like the Métis fiddling community. There's a lot of guys that are there's guys from like Belcourt, North Dakota, and then there's a lot of guys from Winnipeg, and they'll get together and um, they'll go to Batoche, Saskatchewan. But these guys are playing gigs across the border with each other. So, like one guy will throw sort of a backyard kind of festival, and a bunch of the guys from Winnipeg will come down, and sort of vice versa, because it's really not that far for them. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes on the other side of the border for us, and once you get to it's 2 hours to the border for me. But yeah, I mean,
And I've heard that there's already sort of an existing back and forth community between Calgary and Winnipeg, down to Montana, North Dakota, and stuff, because the rodeo circuit has been in place that crosses the border all the time
yeah,
for so long that there's already some connections going on there.
I think that circle, it's like there's other circles like that too, but there's that circle of people that, it's sort of the same idea as like being a biker. Everybody goes to Sturgis. It's like it's just one of those things, right?
Yep.
So I think there's a community of people. It doesn't really matter whether you're Canadian or American. if you're into riding horses or whatever the case is, right? It's but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of. What's funny about it though is, and this is, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I remember having a conversation with this one guy I know from Belcourt, and I was telling him about this band called the Tragically Hip, which is a gigantic, huge Canadian band. Like they sell out stadiums in Canada, and he'd never heard of them before, and they've been around for like 20 years. And he's seriously like 15 minutes from the border. Like you'd think you'd get a rock radio station of ours there, but it's just,
that's what kind of why I brought up the whole
it's
more
weird.
country music thing, because it seems like it has more pervasion across the border than the rock stuff, because we really don't get a lot of Canadian rock bands, or at least smaller ones. We don't really hear about them here. It's interesting.
Well, what's funny too about them specifically, like they go when they go down the states and they do a stateside tour, they're playing small clubs and they're playing like 1,500 seat theaters down there, and up here it's like 20,000, 30,000 people shows. It's really weird. But getting back to the community thing, I think that might be part of it though, right? Like there's a guy that I've recorded before. His name's Clayton. He's this sort of old country singer, yodeling guy, and he's like very traditional kind of Wolf Carter kind of country, and that's his whole deal is going down to these rodeos and double B kind of small town places, right? That's what he does. He does the gigs there, whether it's in the Legion or it's in the dance hall at the end of the night or whatever, and he's made a living doing that. So I mean, there's people on both sides of the border who know who he is, and it's just, I think it's just that kind of style of music, right?
Yeah. And it reminds me of what my grandfather used to do. He led a big band from the 40s all the way up through the 70s and 80s, and it was a lot of that kind of thing. You're going from high school proms to the VA to whatever, and working musicians can get by doing that. I think that world is still there.
Oh, and I think that world's always going to be there. I mean, people are going to pay at the door to see music that they can dance to or tap their toes to. That's what I always say. It's like rock and roll is a lot harder of or anything that's sort of more mainstream. It's a lot harder of a sell than something like that. I mean, I've told some of the guys that I know, I'm like, if I wanted to make money being a musician, I'd be in a polka band, because I can guarantee I'll play every weekend, and every weekend I'll have $50 in my pocket. You can't get that in a rock band. We're lucky if we get $10 for the whole band sometimes.
Yeah. I have heard that from a few people that I know that are in bands currently, that it's not a really good time to be out there trying to make money doing this on some genres anyway.
Well, like Winnipeg, for example, off the top of my head, there's 3 to 5 places where you can play rock and roll music. Like, it's a big city, but I mean live original rock and roll music, not live cover band top 40 BS.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, what's your audience, right? You and me are both 30-ish. How often do you go out Friday, Saturday night and go see bands?
Right.
And so the people who are going to come and see us are normally around that same age. Well, there's a lot of people in that, they've got kids, it's hard, you know what I mean? So and being original music, it's even more of a harder sell. I mean, if you play more cover songs and you play stuff that's dancey, that's a whole different ball of wax. But yeah, and that's where I think stuff like folk stuff and acoustic stuff, it opens up more venues, more places to play,
Yeah, because they're not expecting the cover. They're expecting you to show up with something interesting and new.
Yeah, and I mean, like with us specifically, we used to, and we still do quite a lot of shows where, it's percussion and acoustic guitars and stuff like that. And we can play more places doing stuff like that we still make basically the same money, but we can play more places doing stuff like that, more different types of venues. You know, if you want to just be a big loud rock band, there's only a handful of places that you can go and play, right? So, yeah.
Well, as long as you're covering the cost of drinks, it's all good, right?
Yeah, and they usually will comp you one or two, which is always nice. How are we doing on time?
We're out of time.
That's what I thought.
So, thank you everyone for listening this week. We'll be back next Friday, another episode of PatchBay. So, patchbay.tv is where you can find us. We put up pretty much every week. I mean, we took a week off for the holidays, but other than that, you know, every week. And yeah, you can listen right there on the page, or you can have it automatically download to your phone for listening to it on your commute, your iTunes, whatever you want to do. There's a lot of options there. It's really easy. We'll see you guys next week.